So you have heard this morning so many stories. Stories about a group of people who embarked on a journey together. And what I think you've probably gotten the sense of is how much happened from that very first time when we came from all our different travels and we gathered in the hotel lobby of the Hotel Victoria. We were in that first meeting hungry and tired. We were confused about the time zone, some of us. We were confused about simple things like how do you lock your hotel room in Romania? It's different. Between that time and when we last gathered there, which wasn't planned, but that's how it worked out, the lobby of that same hotel where we were let off our last bus ride, we were also in that time very tired. We were much full of the generous food from our village hosts, and we were linked together by a common sense of having engaged together in a remarkable journey, a journey of discovery about our faith. That first time that we gathered in that lobby, we tried to sing Beth Norton's interpretation of this AK blessing. And let me just say that while it may be found in embroidered samplers in many homes through Transylvania, our performance was less than inspiring. David Stanley, who had been the big advocate of us singing this song, said, well, maybe not. But we did keep on singing. You know, we all know this in our own lives, that some experiences are very hard to actually capture in words. And we're going to keep talking to you about this, not only throughout this year, but throughout our years together as a congregation. Because what we learned was that this is a connection that we need to keep nurturing. It's been mentioned by some of our speakers, but it bears repeating, that one of the themes that we got to hear about was this idea of religious freedom, which is the basis and actually the means by which we gather here every week. We celebrated both its existence, its origins, and also how quickly it could be lost. To celebrate that with people who have lived for centuries knowing both its existence and its loss simultaneously is something that it's hard to capture. We celebrated both our common Unitarian ideas and also how different that ethnic Hungarian expression of Unitarian Christianity is from what we know today as Unitarian Universalism. Through all of this, we just kept on traveling. We thought a lot about these things and tried to capture what it means to see them through the eyes of our global cousins. Outside that church at Torda, which is now a Catholic church, where Francis David preached the first Unitarian sermon in the world in 1566, we were listening to Reverend Maria Pop, who was, as Marjorie said, one of the first two women ministers in Transylvania. And she was reading excerpts from a sermon she had written about the Partner Church program and its imbalance of power and the differential of experience from the Transylvanian perspective. She invited all of us into the viewpoint of a people who have been so frequently dispossessed and oppressed, and asked us not to judge them through our lens of privilege. And then a few days later, we stood at that monument that we had pictures from a number of our photographers of, that monument erected by the Transylvanian Unitarians on the site where Francis David, in Hungarian known as Ferenc David, paid the price for his ideas. We were literally standing amid stones, connected to stones, which were those that the history tells us he carved his most famous quote into those stones before he died. And these are those words. Neither the sword of popes nor the cross nor the image of death, nothing will halt the march of truth. I wrote what I felt, and this is what I preached with trusting spirit. I am convinced that after my destruction, the teachings of false prophets will collapse. We as modern Unitarian Universalists, who often won't even tell the people next to us in the next cubicle at work what we believe, are really challenged to think about someone who was willing to carve these words in the stones before he died. Despite the differences and the complexities, for brief moments we understood what that deep unity that he saw in his Christian faith meant. For me, one of those moments came when I had the deep privilege of being able to offer communion alongside my partner church colleague, the Reverend Tokas Laurent. In a few hurried moments before the service began at Erdo San Giorgi, he suddenly realized that I probably was clueless about this, how to do it right. And he took a moment to show me how properly to hold the goblet which was 450 years old. And then he showed me how to offer the bread to each person. The second time we did it, at his second church, in Shoksvala, he looked at me sternly and he told me to go slower. The part, though, he didn't need to tell me, which is the part that Judy alluded to so beautifully, was the way that you can make a deep connection between hearts and eyes. For with almost every person, except for a few men for whom I think in their deeply traditional society they could not accept communion truly from a woman, almost everyone else, we met eyes, and that gaze linked us across our common experience. Reverend Maria Pop wrote this about communion. We gather together to celebrate in this ritual, this home we offer and build for ourselves and each other, to celebrate the love which unites us even in our difference, and to celebrate and reinforce our community with each other, our commitment to continuing to be the living stones of faith and love and hope in the world. As I said in our Time for All Ages, a pilgrimage is different from some of the other kinds of trips we love to take, which are also wonderful. On a visit, we take in the sights and we meet the people and we have the experiences. On a pilgrimage, we go trying to understand a larger truth about ourselves and also about our deepest frames of meaning. We seek to know ourselves more, and in doing so to hold our interdependence more and to hold those truths that are so much greater than ourselves. It is on a pilgrimage when we have to remind ourselves that we are stewards of a great legacy and to ask ourselves, what are we each willing to sacrifice for this faith? What parts of our own personal preferences would we give up to keep it alive in the years to come, as these people have through so much oppression? How are we willing to be in service to this faith? This is a story that continues. And I want to say one more word about singing, because that was the thread of our service, singing that song when we could on our very busy days, each time just a little bit better, although Reverend Lauren did say to me afterward, actually said in the service after we sang, we appreciate that our visitors made the attempt to speak our language, which was fair. But when I arrived at the Erdo San Giorgi Church on the final day of the trip, most of our delegation had already come. I came with the minister, so we were late. And as we ran through that final practice, it was as if we were singing all that we had learned from that deep place of connection that we had made on that journey. It had a totally different quality to any other time that we had sung it. It was not musically perfect, and we already said the Hungarian left a lot to be desired, but it was a true offering by a group of people who had been on the deepest journey of the heart together and who understood what it meant to sing those words to our now precious global cousins. In that moment, in that room, I understood anew the words of Ferenc David's great proclamation, Agi es Esten, God is one. So let us all keep journeying on, journeying and singing.